Derby County defender Sondre Langas has had his injury latest confirmed after a round of successful surgery on a torn meniscus injury that he suffered back versus Blackburn Rovers at the beginning of March. Now obviously Sondre Langas did go on to play through the final period of the season as he helped Derby County secure survival in the EFL Championship. Now the 24-year-old midfielder has been a massive part of that defensive unit. Did I just say 24-year-old midfielder? Well, 24-year-old defender has been a massive part of John Eustace's defensive unit, and it's been really impressive to see how he's worked through obviously the issues that he's had this season, obviously with that meniscus tear. It's obviously disappointing for Sondre that he had to go through that, and realistically we've still not seen the best of Sondre Langas. Now obviously the most important thing for Derby County is making sure that he's back up to full fitness, and obviously the only way we're going to see that happen is obviously by having this surgery. Now the expectation is that he's going to be out until around the end of August, which doesn't surprise me if I'm completely honest. I think we're probably more likely to see him early September than late August if I'm completely honest. Now realistically for Derby County, having Langas play through that injury was one of the reasons why Derby County stayed in the division. If he'd have gone through the surgery early, could Derby County have gone down? Absolutely. There is that conversation that could be had. It would have probably led to Derby County again having to change sort of formation and philosophy, etc. for the final period of the season. But the positive is Langas got through the surgery, got through the end of the season, and never had to deal with any further damage. Now, obviously that was obviously the big worry about Langas playing through, and Langas talks in this article about having that conversation with John Eustace consistently about sort of having to be honest with Eustace about the way Derby County are going to go and sort of how he's feeling with his knee and things like that. And obviously that's the most important thing, having that trust in your manager and the trust in those people in the medical staff around you that they're going to do the right thing. Now we know that Derby County have had problems in that medical department over the course of the last 12 months, especially with the amount of injuries we've suffered, and I think the way that they've dealt with this Langas situation, it's a positive one, and I do believe if Derby County were safe with 3 games to go, I think he would have gone for the surgery then and there, essentially, if I'm completely honest. But ultimately, he had to wait till the final day. I think it says somewhere in this article that he's going to be sort of on crutches for the next 6 to 8 weeks, which doesn't surprise me at all. I think it'll probably be more like 6. And then obviously back in the gym and then back on probably in a water treadmill, then on the bike, then on sand, then on grass, sort of to get his leg back ready and available. Now, that does mean that we're not going to see Sondre Langas probably throughout pre-season. We might see him in training videos and things like that, but we probably won't see him involved in any of those pre-season games, which means he's going to come in a little bit undercooked, but it also means that Derby County can give him all that pre-season work before he gets into obviously the starting 11 again and things like that. But what does that mean for Derby County's future? What does it mean for the transfer window? Now, obviously we spoke earlier today about the contract extension to Matt Clark. I say earlier today, this video might come out the day after. All depends on if the retained list drops later on today. But we took a look at that squad depth chart early on in that video, which obviously has the centre-back situation quite stocked up really, with Matt Clark obviously with 3 more years, Jake Rooney and Nelson both with another year, and Sondre Langas with 4 years left on his contract. But what does it mean? Now, obviously, if he's going to be out until September, it may mean that Derby County bring in maybe a potential 6-month loan, because obviously you've got to have that conversation about Curtis Nelson as well, who's probably not going to be back until October. We're not quite sure where Jake Rooney fits in at the moment. And obviously Derby County are going to want to improve. Now, obviously, if you bring back Forsyth, you've then got 2 players who can play in that central defence position in Matt Clark and Craig Forsyth, but we don't have any confirmation on that as of time of recording, which is 4:25 on the 15th of May. So when we sort of discuss this injury and how it's going to impact Derby County moving forward, we know that we're going to be missing Langas and Nelson for the start of next season, which could see Derby County dip into that loan market for a 6-month loan deal for a centre-half. Could also mean that Derby County sort of bring in another young centre-half to sort of be that replacement for Curtis Nelson at the end of next season. And obviously, we actually don't know where sort of Jake Rooney fits into the plans of John Eustace, which is going to be a massive conversation over the course of the next few months, because realistically, Jake Rooney hasn't played for Derby, and he's been given, realistically, an extra 5 or 6 months recovery time on top of that ACL and then meniscus tear that he did, which sort of does open up those doors for him to really prove himself with John Eustace. Obviously, John Eustace stuck with his back five and obviously would prefer to play an injured Langas over him. But where could Rooney end up? I do believe that we're sort of in this position where at the moment a lot is obviously going to depend on the moves made in the summer transfer window. Sorry, not the January transfer window. That was a few months ago, and we are in a difficult spot for me because we've got quite a few positions which need work. The wide areas, number 9, obviously in midfield at the moment. We've only got 2 central midfielders on the books, depending on where you class Ben Osborne to be. I personally think he'll probably be in that sort of left-back role with Callum Elder and sort of rotate between the midfield and left-back. And then obviously we've only got 2 fit centre-halves for the start of next season as of today. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done by John Eustace. Obviously, there's conversations going on about what could potentially happen with Nat Phillips over the course of the summer with his deal at Liverpool expiring. Is that something which Derby County can get done early doors? And then you've sort of got that sort of base built in of Zetterstrom, Clark and Phillips. Obviously, then you also then open up the door to be able to go to a back 3. If you did see that video earlier today, you'll know that in my depth chart, I've got it as a 4-3-3 because I do believe that Derby County are going to sort of filter into either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 setup next season, with obviously John Eustace having a full transfer window. And realistically, there's a lot of bodies that need to be got, especially in those midfield areas. So being able to move about that midfield and obviously add to the defensive unit will obviously help John Eustace put together a side which he thinks can participate and can compete at this level with a back 4. Now, obviously, if you were to ask me today what my sort of starting 11 would be for Derby County, you'd obviously have to go for a 4-4-2. You'd go with Zetterstrom in goal, a back 4 of Elder, Clark, Langas and Wilson. Your midfield would be Blackett-Taylor on the left, Adams, Kenzo and Jackson, or Mendez-Lang on the right. Probably more Mendez-Lang than Jackson maybe. And then your front 2 would have to be Selverson and Dejan Brown, because obviously they're the only 2 strikers that we have. But obviously, if we're going to move into this 4-3-3 system, we're going to need to add a few bodies. But who are those bodies going to be? We've got tons of videos going across the course of the next months, essentially, until the season gets started again, about what John Eustace is going to do, about what we can expect to see from the transfer window and what players Derby County are currently linked to. There's been another one this afternoon, which I'm going to make a video on in the next few hours, so make sure you stay tuned to the channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on that notification bell to stay tuned for everything that happens with Derby County over the course of this off-season. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments on Sondre Langas' injury. If you have not done so already, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button as well, and I'll catch you in the next one.